So, you want to own GPS. Build the satellites, run the signal, and hand it to the whole world. Simple. Here is the strange part. This is a system that costs tens of billions of dollars to build, and costs well over $1 billion a year to keep running, and it earns its owner, directly, almost nothing. Not a subscription, not a fee, not an advert. 4 billion people and much of the world economy depend on it every single day, and every one of them uses it for free. By any normal business logic, it is a catastrophe. A most heavily used utility on Earth, given away forever to everyone at enormous cost for no revenue at all. And yet a nation built it, runs it, and guards it as one of its most valuable strategic assets, not despite giving it away for free, because of it. By the end of this video, you will know what it actually costs to put a sense of location into orbit and keep it there, why the owner deliberately charges nobody, why a free public gift to the entire planet is also one of the most powerful military assets ever created, and why the true value of owning GPS has nothing to do with money at all. Let me open the ledger, the asset everyone uses and nobody owns. Start with the fact that hides this asset in plain sight, because it is the strangest ownership story in this entire series. You use GPS constantly. It is in your phone, your car, your watch. It guides ships and planes, times the world's financial transactions, synchronizes power grids and mobile networks, steers tractors across fields, and directs deliveries to your door. It has quietly woven itself into the machinery of modern life so completely that if it vanished tomorrow, enormous parts of the world economy would grind to a halt. Here is what almost nobody realizes. That utility, the one in everybody's pocket, is a military system. It was built by a nation's armed forces for military purposes, and it is still owned and operated by that nation's military to this day. A single most widely used piece of civilian infrastructure on the planet is, at its heart, a weapon system that the whole world was invited to use for free. So, when we ask who owns GPS, the answer is not a company. There are no shareholders, no customers in the ordinary sense, no bills. It is owned by a state, run by its military, and paid for entirely by that nation's taxpayers, who fund a service that 4 billion strangers around the world then use at no charge. Sit with how unusual that is. Almost every valuable thing on Earth is owned by whoever pays for it and used by whoever pays to use it. Here, one nation pays for all of it, and the entire rest of the planet uses it for nothing, including that nation's rivals and competitors, who navigate their own ships and time their own economies on a signal a foreign military beams down to them for free. No sane accountant would ever sign off on it. Yet it is one of the most deliberate and successful strategic decisions any nation has ever made. That is not a business model. It is something far stranger. And understanding why a nation would do this is the whole point. What it actually costs. So before the why, the how much, because the numbers are staggering and they only deepen the mystery. To own GPS, you own a constellation, a ring of satellites high above the Earth, arranged so that from any point on the planet, at any moment, enough of them are overhead to fix your position. Keeping enough satellites working at all times means launching and maintaining a fleet of them, each one an expensive spacecraft, each one with a limited life, each one needing to be replaced as it ages. A space part alone is a permanent, rolling, multi-billion-dollar program that never ends, because the constellation can never be allowed to thin out. Then there is the ground. Satellites in orbit are only half the system. On the ground sits a network of control stations, monitoring the satellites, tracking them, correcting them, and constantly updating them so that the signal stays accurate. If you watch the ground station episode, you already know the shape of this. Orbiting hardware is useless without the Earth-bound network that commands and corrects it, and that network runs continuously, forever, staffed and powered around the clock. Add it together, the constellation, the launches, the replacements, the control network, the people, and you get a system that costs tens of billions of dollars to build and costs well over $1 billion every single year just to keep alive and accurate. And every dollar of that is spent to provide a service that is then handed, free to anyone on Earth with a receiver. No other asset in this series burns money on that scale to deliberately earn nothing. Why the owner charges nobody? So now, the heart of it. Why on earth would a nation spend tens of billions building this, and well over $1 billion a year running it, and then refuse to charge a single user a single cent? An answer is one of the shrewdest strategic decisions in modern history, and it turns the whole apparent madness into genius. For a long time, the system carried a deliberate catch. A signal offered to the public was intentionally degraded, made less accurate than the signal the military kept for itself. Everyone got a rough version. An owner kept the sharp one. Then, at a stroke, the owner switched that degradation off and made the full, accurate civilian signal free to everyone, everywhere, permanently. Why give away the good version? Because the moment the accurate signal was free, the entire world built itself on top of it. Every phone maker, every car company, every shipping line, every airline, every farmer, every app, every financial system, all of them wired GPS into the foundations of what they do, precisely because it was free and universal and there was no reason not to. The owner gave away the signal, and in return, the entire planet voluntarily made itself dependent on the owner's system. There was no treaty, no negotiation, no arm twisting. Nobody forced the world onto GPS. It rushed onto it, gratefully, because it was free and it worked and it was there. Every engineer who built it into a product was making the obvious, rational choice, and in making it 4 billion times over, the world quietly wired itself into a foundation owned by someone else. A most complete dependency in modern history was assembled not by conquest, but by generosity, one free download at a time. Think about what that buys, and it is worth far more than any subscription fee ever could be. First, it makes the owner's standard the world standard. By giving it away, the owner ensured that its system, and not a rival's, became the invisible foundation of the global economy. A fee would have invited competitors and fractured the market. Free made it universal, and universal made it unassailable. Second, and this is the deep move, it means the entire world now runs on a system the owner controls. Control of a thing the whole world depends on is a form of power that no amount of subscription revenue could ever purchase. An owner did not fail to charge. That owner chose not to, because giving it away for free bought something no money could. Listen to that again. An owner spends billions to give the world a gift, and the gift is also the leash. Say that again. By making the accurate signal free, the owner made the entire planet dependent on a system it alone builds, runs, and, in the last resort, controls. Everyone got a miracle of free navigation, and the owner got the whole world standing on a foundation with the owner's hand on it. That is the entire economic logic of GPS in a single sentence. It looks like the most generous act in the history of infrastructure, a priceless utility given free to all mankind. And it is also the quiet establishment of a dependency so total that the owner's position at the center of it is worth more than any fee could ever be. A gift and the strategic asset are the same act. That is the paradox at the heart of owning GPS. What you are actually buying. So step back and ask what a nation actually purchased with all those billions. Not a revenue stream. There is none. What it bought is something stranger and more valuable. It bought ownership of the world's sense of where everything is. Consider what that means. GPS does not just tell you where you are. It tells the whole world where everything is, and it provides the invisible, precise timing signal that huge parts of modern infrastructure quietly run on, from financial markets to communications networks. An owner did not buy a navigation app. That owner bought a position at the foundation of how the modern world knows location and keeps time, a foundation that is now so deep and so universal that almost nothing works without it. Here is why that is a strategic asset and not just a public service. The owner provides this foundation to the entire world, in peacetime, freely, and everyone comes to depend on it utterly. But it remains the owner's system. An owner built it, runs it, and the owner alone holds ultimate authority over it. In ordinary times, that authority is invisible, and the gift flows freely to all. But the mere fact of holding it, of being the one nation whose system the whole world stands upon, is a source of strategic weight that exists whether or not it is ever used. You are not buying a service. You are buying a place at the very bottom of the modern world, the layer everything else is built on top of. And ownership of a foundation is a different kind of power than ownership of a business. A business can be outcompeted, undercut, or replaced. A foundation is different. When everything else is built on top of you, you are not competing at all. You are the ground the competition happens on. That is why a nation will pour billions into something that never sends an invoice, because being the foundation is worth more than being the most profitable company on that foundation ever could be. The ledger. So what leaves the account? For a system that takes in nothing? Everything. And it never stops. A constellation must be maintained, which means a permanent program of building and launching replacement satellites forever, because every satellite ages and dies and the ring can never be allowed to thin. That alone is a rolling multi-billion-dollar commitment with no end date. Then the ground control network, running continuously, staffed around the clock, monitoring and correcting the satellites every hour of every day for decades, exactly like the ground station and the early warning station before it. That same relentless, invisible, always-on cost, for the same reason. At the moment the watch slips, the accuracy slips, and the world notices immediately. Then the constant work of keeping the whole system accurate, secure, and modern, upgrading it as technology moves and as the world's dependence on it deepens, because a system this critical cannot be allowed to fall behind. And against all of that expenditure, the revenue line reads zero. This is, on paper, the worst business in this entire series. A permanent, enormous, never-ending cost, deliberately matched to no income whatsoever. Imagine pitching that to an investor. You will spend tens of billions to build it, over $1 billion a year to run it, forever, and you will charge every one of your 4 billion users exactly nothing, with no plan to ever change that. Any investor would throw you out of the room, and they would be right if it were a business. It is not. It only makes sense at all once you stop reading it as a business and start reading it as what it is. This is the same lesson every asset in this cluster has taught, taken to its absolute extreme. Tank factory, dry dock, fuel reserve, the radar station. None of them made sense as a normal business either, because none of them was one. They were national capabilities wearing the costume of infrastructure. GPS is the purest example of all, because it does not even pretend to earn. It is a capability, total and naked, funded by a nation for reasons the profit and loss statement cannot see and was never meant to. National infrastructure and a strategic asset, funded by a nation for reasons that have nothing to do with profit and everything to do with power and position. The trap. The trap here is unlike any other in this series, because the owner's problem is not losing money. That owner expected to lose money. A trap is subtler and far more modern. A whole world is now utterly dependent on your free gift, and that dependency has become a vulnerability you are responsible for. Think it through. By giving GPS away and letting the world build everything on top of it, the owner created a dependency so complete that the system is now a single point of failure for enormous parts of global life. Navigation, logistics, finance, communications, power, all leaning on one signal from one system. That total dependence, which is the source of the owner's strategic weight, is also a colossal fragility, and the owner is the one holding it. If that signal is ever seriously disrupted by anyone or anything, the consequences ripple through the entire world economy, and the owner is the one everyone looks to, because it is the owner's system. A gift that bought so much power also bought an enormous, permanent responsibility. You have made yourself the keeper of a foundation the whole world stands on, which means you now carry the weight of keeping it standing, forever, against every possible threat, at your own expense, for everyone else's benefit. A second trap is competition at the level of nations. Owning the world's positioning standard is so valuable that other powers, seeing exactly what it is worth, build their own rival systems, so as not to depend on someone else's. Over time, the owner's monopoly on the world's sense of location erodes, not because anyone charged a better price, but because no serious rival power can accept depending on another nation's system for something this fundamental. A very strategic value that makes GPS worth owning guarantees that others will spend fortunes to break the owner's exclusive hold on it. The history digression. It is worth understanding how a military system ended up in everybody's pocket, because it was not the plan. GPS was built for one purpose: military positioning, an ability for a nation-owned forces to know exactly where they were, anywhere on Earth, at any time, was an enormous military advantage, and that, and only that, is what justified the staggering cost of building it. A civilian world was an afterthought, allowed to use a deliberately blurred version of the signal, almost as a courtesy. Then two things happened. Technology to build small, cheap receivers spread, and suddenly ordinary devices could listen to the signal. Then the owner made the strategic choice to switch off the blur and hand the accurate signal to everyone. At the moment that happened, the civilian use of a military system exploded far beyond anything its builders had imagined. An asset built purely to help soldiers find their position became the invisible backbone of the entire civilian world, woven into billions of devices and trillions of dollars of activity, all resting on a system that a nation's military still quietly owns and runs to this day. It is one of the great quiet ironies of the modern world. The device you use to find a coffee shop is listening to a military satellite. The timing signal that lets your bank settle a payment comes from a defense system. The whole soft, civilian, everyday convenience of knowing exactly where you are rests, invisibly, on a hard strategic asset built for war, and almost nobody who depends on it has ever once thought about who is paying to keep it in the sky. A soldier's tool became the world utility, and almost nobody using it has any idea of what it really is, or who really owns it. The verdict. So, could you own GPS? No, and it is the purest case in this whole series of an asset that only a nation can own, and only a nation would want to. It generates no revenue, costs a fortune forever, and gives its entire output away for free. In pure business terms, it is indefensible. As a strategic asset, it is close to priceless, because what it actually delivers is not money but position, the ownership of the foundation the modern world stands on, and that is something no company could ever build or hold. Here is the good year, and like the rest of this cluster, it is a strange one. Nothing dramatic happens. Satellites orbit, ground stations watch, the signal flows, and 4 billion people navigate, transact, and coordinate their lives on a free gift they never think about and mostly do not understand. It works flawlessly and invisibly, costs its owner a fortune, earns nothing, and quietly holds the entire modern world together while placing its owner at the exact center of that world. That is the perfect result. A foundation, holding, unnoticed, for another year. And here is the bad year. A relentless cost of maintaining the constellation and the ground network runs on, forever, with no revenue to soften it, always vulnerable to the budget question of why a nation spends so much to give the world something for free. Rival powers build competing systems and the owner's unique position slowly erodes. And the terrible dependency the owner created hangs over everything, because the day that signal is ever seriously disrupted, the owner discovers exactly how much of the world was resting on its shoulders and how completely it is now responsible for a foundation it can never stop paying to hold up. Same constellation. What separates them is whether a nation understood that it was never running a business at all. It was buying and then forever defending ownership of the ground the whole world walks on without ever looking down. Every other asset in this series is something you could point to. A factory, a dock, a field of dishes, a tank behind glass. GPS is stranger than all of them, because you cannot point to it at all. It is a signal from the sky that is everywhere and nowhere, in every pocket and utterly invisible, used by billions who have no idea it exists as a thing anyone owns. And that is exactly what makes it the ultimate version of everything this cluster has been about. An asset whose value is not in what it is made of or what it earns, but in the position it holds. The owner spends billions to give the world a miracle for free, and in doing so becomes the one nation the entire planet quietly depends on to know where it is and when it is. There is no invoice for that. There could never be. It is worth far more than any invoice. No nation has ever managed to charge the world for its sense of direction, and the one that owns GPS understood, better than anyone, that it should never try. The value was always in the owning and the giving, never in the selling. The moment you put a price on it, you would lose the world, and losing the world is the one thing the whole enormous expense exists to prevent. You are not buying a constellation of satellites. You are buying the floor beneath the modern world, the invisible foundation of location and time that everything else is built upon, and you are paying, forever, to give it away for free. Because the only thing more valuable than selling the world, its sense of place, is being the one who owns it and chooses, every single day, to hand it over.